Hello everyone and welcome to Wildcard Workshop. I'm here to teach you how to make mods. So, for those of you who don't know me, I am the new mod community manager. A lot of people know me as Zenro. My real name is Josh. A lot of people just call me Zen. In real life too, actually. I am new at this. I am not a secret YouTube personality with a ton of experience under my belt making videos. Things might be rocky starting out. I will get better at it, please rest assured. But if there's ever questions that you have, if I ever fail to explain something in full, please leave a comment. I'll try to make sure that those are addressed. So what is a modder? A modder is someone who wants to create their own additions to the game. They want to change how it works, either in small ways or large ones. There are lots of different types of mods out there, and what it comes down to is just, what do you want to do with the game? What would you change? What would you add? What would you take away? Would it even be the same game anymore? It's a good question. It's one you kind of have to decide before you start. But ultimately, a modder is someone that's just a little bit crazy. So what kind of mods can you make? Well, there are your standard game mods. And by standard, I don't mean that they're simple, just that they're the most common kinds of mods that you're going to find for art. These are mods that add code functionality, they add new content, such as gear, or weapons, or new creatures, or they change the mechanics of the game. Okay? In less critical ways. Then we have map mods. These are mods that add full maps. They can have game logic to them. They don't need to, but they can, and doing so can make your maps a lot more interesting. We also have map extensions. These are subsections of maps that can be added to existing ones, such as like floating islands or new mountains, new terrain and landscape that overlaps the old stuff. And then there are total conversion. You have the most control over what happens in the game. You can make Ark not even look like Ark anymore by using a total conversion. We have large mechanics mods like Survival Plus, which completely change the way that the game is played. They add new tribal mechanics, new crafting mechanics, whole new structures and items. You've got map mods like Crystal Isles that just add huge environments that change the way that the game looks and feels. You've got economy mods like the Auction House and Impulse's economy mods universe that add player-driven economies to the game. The Auction House is actually supported by a large back-end server external to the game, which manages all of these cross-server purchases and transactions. I would feel pretty comfortable saying that the kinds of mods that you can make far outnumbers the kinds of mods that you can't. Mostly it comes down to your own imagination, how creative you are, how good you are at tackling problems and finding creative solutions. Usually with a bit of hijinks, you can usually find some way to do most things. So for this first video, we're going to focus on setting up our project space for our first mod. We're going to install the dev kit from the Epic launcher. We're going to set up our mod folder and get the minimum required number of files that are necessary for a game mod. Our first mod is going to be just a simple structure that spawns a creature, tracks whether or not it dies, and when it does die, it spawns another one. So just a simple one for now. The first thing you're going to want to do is get yourself set up with an Epic Games account. Go ahead and head to accounts.epicgames.com/register, and you'll find yourself on this screen. The link will also be in the description. Go ahead and select your preferred sign-in method, either Facebook, Google Plus, or a standalone account. For a standalone account, just fill out this form like so. Email, password, create account, and that's all there is to it. After you've created your account, head over to epicgames.com/download and you will find yourself on this screen. Select your platform for which you're downloading, and once it's finished downloading, go ahead and install it, and then we'll head right over to the launcher. Once you have the launcher installed and open, you will find yourself on this screen. Go ahead and sign in with one of these options if that was what you chose for your account, or for a standalone account, just putting it in here. Once you open it and sign in, you should find yourself on this screen. What you want to do is you want to head over here to the Modding tab up at the top right. Make sure Ark Survival Evolved is selected, and then hit install. Select your installation directory. Now, I recommend installing to an SSD, but make sure you've got room. The dev kit is going to take up, maybe about 160 gigs by the time that we've set up our first mod folder. So keep that in mind. It is going to be a massive installation. So if you can't devote an SSD to the dev kit, that's fine. An HDD will work, but keep in mind that your loading times in the dev kit will be significantly longer. So once you've selected your directory, go ahead and hit install. So while the dev kit is installing, because it is going to take so long, a few hours for most of us. But while it's installing, let's talk about what resources you have available to you, and maybe you can go visit them as well during this downtime. The first of which is the Ark subforum of the Unreal Engine forums, where you will find a ton of information that has been collecting since the start of modding for Ark. You will find tutorials. You'll find people offering suggestions for changes, information that's been found in the dev kit. You'll find updates on what's going on with the dev kit when new changes are pushed out. This is a good place to go for a lot of archived information on the dev kit. The next place to check would be the workshop subforum of survivetheark.com. Right down here, you'll find general discussion related to the dev kit and mods. This would be a good place to go for interaction with other players to get ideas on maybe what's popular, inspiration for new mods, or just have a good place to communicate with people. The next resource you have available to you is arkmodding.net. This is a site that was set up by the community. On here you will find articles written by other modders covering a wide range of topics. You will find project source files for mods that have been made available for learning resources. You will find blueprint snippets, a wiki, where there is a good amount of information on here that will probably be useful to you. And that brings us to the Ark Modding Discord. This Discord was also set up by the community a couple years ago. To get an invite, you'll want to go to discord.arkmodding.net, and you will sign in through the Steam API with your Steam account. This will generate an invite for you for the Discord server itself. Once you have joined the server, you'll find several hundred modders on here. People talk in here on a daily basis, share information, help each other solve problems. It's a good place to go for quick feedback and suggestions when you've run into problems, or when you want to help other people overcome problems, or when you just want to talk about theoretical designs. the largest resource available to you is the massive amount of documentation available online for Unreal Engine 4. The Arc Dev Kit is built on UE4. It's a modified version of it. So a lot of the same processes and systems that are valid for UE4 are also valid for the Arc Dev Kit. You can browse the documentation website for information on how blueprints work, how materials work, how behavioral trees work, and these will be valid for the Arc Dev Kit. There's also a forum for UE4 where there's tons of information available here as well. And there's also a video tutorial series that Epic put out for UE4, and you will find very helpful information and visuals for getting used to things like blueprint visual scripting, or working with skeletons in the dev kit, or working with the material editor. These resources should not be ignored just because they aren't for the Arc Dev Kit specifically. These are information on the base systems for which Arc is built on. You may start working on your mod and run into a topic that we haven't hit in this series yet. Those might be good places to check and see if the information is already available. So check them out, have fun, learn. So once your dev kit is finally installed, let's go ahead and launch it. Won't take too long, but just give it a moment. And once your dev kit is opened, you will see a bunch of windows that probably look a bit intimidating and you don't know what they're for. That's fine. Let's take a look at a few of them. In the middle here, you have the viewport. This shows you the level that you're currently working on. It has all of the landscape stuff, objects on the map. You can move around, you can see what's around on the level. Pretty simple stuff. On the top right here, you'll see the scene outliner. This shows you all of the objects that are in the map. As you can see, as I click things on here, they'll highlight. We'll get more into these tools as well as we start working with them. But for now, this is just a brief overview. On the bottom right here, you will see a details panel. When you select things here, you can view the details of those objects. In the top left here, you will see a bunch of tools. These are map tools, stuff for landscaping, painting the landscape. And in the top, you will find a toolbar for editor functions. It's kind of a mishmash of different things here. And in the bottom left here, you will find the content browser. This will show you the file system for the dev kit. All of the files, all of the assets, all of the levels, all of those can be found by navigating the content browser. Now I recommend clicking on this little button, show or hide the sources panel. Then you get the tree view, and that makes it a little bit easier to move around and see what you want to look at. Let's set up our project space for our first mod. So what we want to do is we want to go down here into the mods folder. And this is an important note. For now, you should treat all of these other locations in the content browser, all these other folders, all of the assets and files in them, you should treat them as not editable. These are all of the assets that are already in the game. And when you go to cook your mod, cooking is when you have the editor process all of your mod files and package them to get ready for uploading to Steam so that other users can use the mod. But when you go to cook the mod, none of these assets will be included in it, except for in very special circumstances, which we'll get into down the road when we start talking about other mod types. But for the standard game mod, which is what we're doing right now, you should treat it as that these assets should never be modified. If you do accidentally modify one, just close the dev kit without saving those files and reopen it, and it'll be fine. If you do accidentally save a file that's over here and you've made changes to it, then you will probably want to open up the launcher again, go to the settings here, and hit verify. This will return all of those assets back to their base state. It'll ignore your mod files, but all of these will be returned back to their original forms. So let's create our project folder. We are going to basically make a dino shrine. Simple enough, right? It's just going to be a structure that spawns a dinosaur, and when the dinosaur dies, it'll spawn another one. Simple enough. So the first thing that we need is a level file. Now, this level file does not need to have any actual level data in it. It doesn't need a landscape. It doesn't need lighting. It doesn't need any of that. But we do need to have it because it is used by the cooker in order to find all of our mod files. So let's create a level file. You'll right click in the content browser. You'll hit level and we'll just name it Dino Shrine. It's best to keep it just the same name as the mod. Just makes it a little bit easier for organization. So we will save that, and we don't need to touch it again for a little bit. Okay? And remember, these level files are basically all of this. When you do get into making level mods, you'll be working heavily within level files themselves. But for standard game mods, we do not. So the next file that you need is what's called a Primal Game Data Blueprint. Now, blueprints are one of the base file types of UE4. These are extensions of C++ classes. They are how you define new classes within the editor itself. Remember, we don't actually have C++ access in the ArcDev kit, so we have to work through the blueprint system. And if you want to learn more about how blueprints work, you can visit UE4's documentation, and it can give you a whole ton of information for how to do a bunch of different things, what the different parts of blueprints are, what their limitations are. Once you're on this screen, what you want to do is come down here to where it says all classes and click that little arrow. This will open up a drop down. So what we're doing here is we're picking the parent class for a new blueprint, for a new class. So what we want to do is we want to look for Primal Game Data. Now, once I click on this, it's going to start loading a bunch of files. What it's doing is it is looking at the Primal Game Data BP, this file right here, and it's going to load it. And when it loads it, it's going to also load all of the other files that are referenced by it in a long cascading chain of suffering. The very first time that you load a Primal Game Data file, it is going to take forever, probably about 20 minutes. It'll get faster on later times that you try to open a Primal Game Data, but generally, the first time that you open a Primal Game Data BP after loading the dev kit, it's going to take a long time because it's loading all of those assets. But especially the very, very, very first time that you load a Primal Game Data BP, it's going to take much longer than any other. So once that is finished loading the Primal Game Data information, you should still be on this screen. Just select Primal Game Data BP one more time and hit select. And that will create our blueprint file. Now you want to make sure, and this is a requirement, that the file is named Primal Game Data _BP, and then suffix it with your mod name, for instance. Now, this is important to suffix your files because you want to make sure that you don't have any files that have the same names as other ones in the kit. While they might be in separate folders and the editor can tell them apart, if you go into a blueprint and let's say you make a variable and you want to set it to a specific type that you've created for your mod, but that blueprint also shares a name with one of the base assets of the game, you're not going to be able to tell which one you're selecting in that list. There's going to be no way to differentiate them because it's just strictly the name of the file that's shown. So always suffix your mod files with like a mod name or a mod acronym, something just to set it apart from the base files and potentially other mods as well. So now we've created our Primal Game Data Blueprint. Let's go ahead and open it up and we'll take a look at what a blueprint is. So it'll open up this new window and you will see a bunch of data here on the front page. This first section, defaults, is where you will find the default data for the class. All of these values are inherited from the parent class. So we'll talk about inheritance in the next video when we start actually working on the mod. But just know that when I say inheritance, it's just sort of the same meaning of inheritance as you're used to. It is something that it gets from the parent. All of these values are for setting up mods, game data, listings of creatures, structures. Most of this we will not need to worry about. Okay, what we're going to do in here, and this is all we're going to do for right now, is we're just going to name the mod and give it a description. Adds a new structure that spawns a dino. That's it. And we'll save this. So a little bit about what blueprints are. As I said, they are classes. They are classes. The editor will recognize them as classes. When you're working with graphs, they will be identified as classes. These are basically the building blocks that the game uses for generating objects or data. These are containers of information and logic. So here's an example of information. It's just a ton of information stored in variables. And then we have the graph. Graphs are the meat and potatoes of blueprints. You can add nodes to these. That, let's say, event ticked world. Let this load up for a moment. And from these nodes, you can go into other nodes. These right here, this white line coming from the arrow, this is the path of execution. This is the flow of how the graph will work. Okay, we'll get a lot more into how graphing and blueprints and working with them in future videos, but just be aware that this is where all of the game logic goes for your mod. Now, save that again because I was making changes in the graph, and then we'll do a strict compile. And then once it's done, come back over here to defaults. Now keep in mind for your Primal Game Data BP, you generally won't be messing with the graph in that. But in other blueprints, we will heavily work in the graphs for adding new functionality to the game. So we have done everything we need to do for right now with the Primal Game Data BP. We'll shut it down. Now we need to do one more thing with the level file. Remember I said that the level file is what the cooker uses to link all of your mod files. And the cooker, by the way, is up here. That is this. This is how you package your mods for Steam. This is how it links all of your mod files for packaging. So what we want to do is we want to open the level file. Just double click it. Hit So this is a good example. This is one of those base assets that's already in the kit that we don't want to save. We don't want to make changes to. So hit don't save. And now it's loaded it, and it's just a black screen. Now remember I said that for the level file for a game mod, we don't actually need or want to put any landscape or structures or anything in the level file. The only thing we want to do with it here is we want to go up to settings and then click on world settings. And it'll open this tab over here for world settings. See right there? Now scroll down, find Primal Game Data Override. Select your Primal Game Data BP, link it right there by clicking that little arrow. What that button does is whatever asset that you have selected, it'll try to fill it in the value of that variable. So we have linked it there. Primal Game Data BP Dino Shrine. We will save. And we are done. This is all that is necessary. These two files are all that are necessary for creating a game mod. Everything after that becomes your actual mod files. Now, in the past, people have looked at the generic mod as an example of what's necessary for the minimum. But you see this test game mode file here? Don't do that. The game mode override is not required, and in fact, you shouldn't do it unless you actually have a specific need to override the game mode. If you don't, and you override it, you could be blocking functionality for other mods that may need to use that. So just keep it to level file and Primal Game Data BP for the minimum number of files required to start a new mod. And there you have it. We have covered what resources you have available to you. We have set up our project space for our first mod. And we are ready to roll. We did kind of run through it, and we didn't really explain a lot of those pieces. We will in future videos, but for right now, I just wanted to get us set up so that as we go through, I can explain different parts of how these systems work. And that's all there is to it. Go out, start experimenting. Happy modding.